Good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Random Crafty Acts, or welcome to Crafty Acts if you haven't been here before. My name is Barb. I'm a volunteer card maker for uh, Operation Gratitude and an obsessed paper crafter person. What I'm working on these days, and what is you'll find in this particular playlist, is card making for 12 by 12 paper. I have a lot of it, and I'm trying to work through my stash. And my go-to for that situation is Jess Crafts. She's at jesscrafts.com. When you get to her page under templates and sketches, you'll find that what I really, really enjoy about her is that her sketches and templates are set up so that when I cut up this piece of 12 by 12 paper, I will be able to make 6 cards with some cardstock, and I won't have any paper pattern paper scraps left. And considering the amount of pattern paper scraps I have, that's really going to be an advantage. So in choosing, once I came up with this particular sketch, one of the things I like about this one is that this will work for what you would refer to as directional paper, which is pretty much what this piece I have is. If you turn it this way, it looks like the leaves are going in the wrong direction. So that works because we're going to cut these pieces like this, okay? If, however, it had not been that case, if it had been non-directional paper, you could turn your pieces after you cut them and make landscape as well as portrait cards. Okay, so the one thing I'm a little concerned about, well, first of all, I don't like what's on the other side of this. It would be nice if I was going to do the brown against the brown, which I'm tempted to do, but not really. Okay, I've got several pieces of this, so if I decide I want to come back to that, I can. The other option to put behind this would be black, and I looked at that, but I really kind of like what the brown is doing. Okay, so instead of having cut this ahead of time, which is something I typically do, we're gonna cut this following her template. Okay, here's an important thing about this template. You always want to look for the lines that run the full length, okay? And that's the ones you want to cut first. And particularly if you're working with directional paper, we're going to want to make sure that our pattern is running this way. Okay, so these are 4 inches across. So I'm going to line this up at 4. And I need 3 of those. And as is common with a lot of paper that comes in paper pads, you find out that they're just a hair off. Like your 12 is not quite 12, or is just a little more than 12. And there's not a lot of situations where that ends up making a difference. All right. And then the other cut that we're going to make is 5 1/4. And because this pretty much fills the front of the card, I picked a pattern that I felt like looked good covering the whole front of the card. Okay, there are some of these that the patterns are smaller and you've got things going on out in the middle. of your pattern, quarter. Okay. And there's something about this that we want to take into consideration, but we don't need to do that right this minute because I like to get all my cutting done first. So let's cut these. This is a 12 by 12. I think it's 65 pound. It's not very heavy. And I want these at 5 3/8, which will fill the background mat behind here. She didn't put a mat about heck there, but I'm going to. So it's 5 3/8, and then 4 1/8. And since color cardstock is not bi-directional, we don't have to worry about that. So that's 1, 2. Do we get a full 4 1/8? No, we don't. But we get 3. Okay, we'll be able to use that. We can cut that down. That's another mat size down. 3 3/4 by 5 is how I would cut that. But I'm going to do something with this at the bottom of there. I feel like I'm talking in code because I've I just had a moment there. 5 3/8. The other thing about this particular cardstock is it's white core, which is not really going to make a difference to me except for, well, it's going to go in a white background. White core means that the ink that colored the paper does not go all the way through. Okay, so we have 4 and we're going to need 6. So let me grab one more piece of paper out of this big paper pad. And 4 1/8. And then a big piece we're going to lay over here. Okay. All right. So the next thing she does on this is she goes into this piece and she cuts a 2 1/4 diameter circle, okay, in this, and then with the idea that you can put the bigger circle over the top of that hole, and then you would put that piece here, and it would be the same pattern as this. And I didn't want that pattern on the front, so everyone who does these templates does them with the intention that you can use them as a starting off point. See, that really does look nice. I don't feel like doing, that's not what I wanted to do. Most of the time with double-sided paper, if you haven't figured that out already, is that it's made so that you can flip it in some of these situations. Okay, now this is where we come to the next part, and she takes this cut in half and puts it down here. So just so I can see if I'm going to like it, I'm going to try that, and if not, I'm just going to use a solid brown piece across the bottom. And I think you can hear in my voice that that's probably what I'm going to do. All right, so this is 375. Which does not do well on this little cutter, but we'll just try it and see. Yeah, see, even with, yeah, I don't think we're going to do that. I think what we're going to do is take this, and remember we had these two pieces over here that are not 4 1/8. All right, the strip across the front under the mat is 4 1/4, and I think I want it to be 4 1/8. If I make it 4 1/8, then it'll go all the way across there. So if I cut this at 4 1/8, all right, let me get in frame. So I'm going to cut this thing at 4 1/8. Okay, and then the distance across there, she's got them at 1 inch. 1 inch is pretty big, but we're going to try it. So I can get 1, 2, 3, and 1 4, one that's not quite 1 inch, but it's not going to make that much of a difference. Okay, so let's try this and see how this looks. So we can put that across there, and then this matches that. I have a little bit of trouble working with this, with these metallic pages, just because they reflect the light so much. This is rose gold, and which I'm kind of assuming is what that color is there, because I tried to get it. Tried to get it out into the light, and then she sets it off center. And I have a little bit of trouble getting the glue to grab on that. And then I have white card bases to put this on. This is the thinner of the 110 that I work with. I have some really heavy 110 that was cover cardstock instead of index cardstock. Okay. That looks pretty good. I think I like it better with just the brown across there. So we can save those green strips. And one of the things that I'll be taking into consideration is that even though I didn't want to use this side in this card sketch, when I use the other pieces of this that I have, I can use that side, and those pieces may come in handy. I don't mean to be quiet. It's just I can't really think of anything to tell you at this point that would make a difference. Okay. It's July 30th. That's my air conditioner running in the background. I'm in Southern Illinois, and it is painfully warm outside. I swear we've had more rain this year than we normally get, and I don't know any farming people well enough to find out how it's going, because obviously we're well into the time of year where they should have their crops in the field. And we have really had an incredible amount of rain. And while that's nice, of course, flowers and some of the other things, it's very hard on our farmers who are trying to get their crops out. Okay, I'm having a little bit of trouble getting these to lay even, so I'm going to use the lines on my mat. And that hangs over just a scooch. So I'm going to flip that over and use my scissors and cut that off so that it lines up. Jess's videos are very helpful. When I was first doing paper crafting, she was one of the people I always looked to teach me how to do a lot of different things. She gives lots of instructions on the cutting portions of this, especially depending on like what kind of paper you're using, and directional and non-directional, and where to cut. And she's really also really good with embellishments. My approach to embellishments is pretty simple. She has several of her videos where she does stamping and coloring, and I always find it very interesting I've learned a lot from her. So anyway, you will see a link to her videos, and specifically to the video for this in the description below. You'll also find a link to Operation Gratitude, both to their regular web page, and if you look under product donation, you'll see the information on cards and all of the things that we make that go into the care packages that go to our deployed servicemen and women. And it is, when I started card making 3 or 4 years ago, I found that it was very easy to make a whole lot more cards than what I had people to send them to. So I started looking for somewhere to donate, and Operation Gratitude was one of the options that I came across. I didn't know how long I'd want to do card making, and so I didn't want to get a relationship started with like someone local, so that I would find myself in a position of having made cards for a while and thought, no, this again is not for me. I'm just taking this strip that we had before and cutting it off. So it goes across here. This is a little wider than the others, but that really doesn't matter to me. So I think we're coming in under 20 minutes easily. And we have 6 cards. All I have to do is fold the cardstock. Okay. I do as much pre-cutting normally as I can before I start a video, and that is mostly when I'm in mass making mode, which is what I'm pretty much focused on right now. That's what I tend to do. I will spend a lot of time like going through the paper that I have, looking for a sketch, figuring out what I want to do, and then doing things like cutting my A2 cards, which you get by just taking a piece of 8.5 by 11 cardstock and cutting it at 5.5, laying it in the cutter landscape, and then that way you get 2 cards out of each piece of paper. I use the 110 pound because it works really well for me. I either work with white or cream depending on what works with the pattern paper that I have. I try to get a layer on there because I think it makes the card look nicer. But I also try not to make the cards too thick, so that there's a problem with them in the envelopes. Okay, that's one of those situations. I'll deal with that in a second. I got some ink splotch on top of the glue, and I have an eraser that I use for that. When I run across something while I'm making, I try to share that with you, because that's how I learned. I mean, I learned by watching other YouTube creators make mistakes and then show how to fix those. Because when we're working with paper, the likelihood of us getting mildly distracted and cutting something wrong, or... Okay, I probably could have cut that down a little bit, but at this point, it's really hard to get a pair of scissors in there. Okay, and let me grab my... This reminds me from the old days of the typewriter ribbon, the typewriter erasers. See that? Pulled that splotch off. And it works. I found out the hard way. It works on everything but white core paper. Because if you do that, then you've got your white splotch down in there. So there's 6. We do have a few scraps. That's not because of her template, but because of the design decision that I made. Okay, so if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would appreciate it if you would do so. It will help push out these videos to help attract other card making volunteers to Operation Gratitude. You will not get emails or messages. It doesn't cost you anything. But again, it does help us work with the algorithm, so that when someone is looking for a card template, that these videos will come up. Thank you very much for being here, and keep checking back.